Tonight we're cracking open the epic, blood-soaked scroll of history to follow a guy who basically went from slave to sword-swinging nightmare, Spartacus. Picture this: misty mountain forests, bitter winds scraping down stone valleys, and war drums pounding in the distance. That's where it all begins. Thrace, a rugged chunk of ancient land that today would sit around Bulgaria, Greece, and Turkey. Not exactly a vacation spot in 111 BCE, unless you were into getting stabbed for glory. Now, Spartacus wasn't born into luxury. He probably wasn't even born into peace. His early life is a blur. No cozy baby photos or proud Thracian warrior family Instagram reels. All we know is this: he was born a free man, probably raised as a tribal warrior, and taught early that survival meant fighting dirty and trusting no one. The Romans? Oh, they were not his fans. Thracians had a habit of joining Roman legions as auxiliary troops, and Spartacus may have done just that. Either that, or he was captured young while rebelling against Roman rule. There's even a spicy theory he deserted the army and got caught. In Rome, deserting was worse than murder, so they chained him up, slapped the slave label on him, and carted him off like defective merchandise. Imagine going from wielding a spear as a proud warrior to being shackled like a dog in a cage. That's Spartacus. You can almost feel the fury simmering beneath the surface. He's not just enslaved, he's insulted. And that's going to matter later. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, I want to know, where are you tuning in from, and what time is it there? Drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Back to Thrace. Life there wasn't about politics or currency or fancy togas. It was about clan loyalty, raw strength, and being able to sprint uphill with a sword in your teeth. Thracians were famously wild and ferocious. Rome even used their name as shorthand for uncontrollable lunatic with an axe. So when they saw Spartacus fight, they knew what he was. Not just strong, unbreakable. He gets shipped south, probably through roads littered with bones and tax collectors. Eventually, he's dumped into one of Rome's favorite industries: slavery. Now, let's be clear, Roman slavery wasn't all foot massages and fanning grapes. It was brutal. You could be a house servant, sure, but you could also be tossed into mines, chained to a millstone, or forced into humiliating public roles like a human lamppost. Literally, they would light torches on you. The Romans were creative like that. Spartacus? He's got the kind of physique and combat skills that make Roman slave traders foam at the mouth. He's not sent to a farm or a quarry. He's sold to Capua. That's not a place, it's a sentence. Specifically, a sentence to the gladiator school run by a guy named Lentulus Batiatus. Now this guy, Batiatus, is part circus manager, part drill sergeant, part human trafficker. He doesn't care where Spartacus came from. All he sees is muscle and a high pain tolerance. Perfect for the arena. And Spartacus? He's about to become a weapon with legs. But let's rewind for a sec and soak in how wild this setup is. You take an enemy of the state, humiliate him, chain him, and then train him to fight like a god so people can watch him kill or be killed for sport. It's like taking your angriest ex, giving them a tank, and asking them to do tricks on live TV. And Spartacus doesn't break. In fact, the opposite happens. He adapts. He observes. And somewhere inside him, a spark catches. Not just for survival, but for vengeance. For freedom. For something way bigger than himself. He's just a slave right now, sure. But already, the wheels are turning. And in the years to come, those wheels are going to crush the Roman Republic underfoot. But for now, he's just a man in chains, eyes fixed on the future, biding his time, and learning exactly how to dismantle the empire that thought it owned him. Capua smells like sweat, metal, and desperation. It's not a city so much as a meat grinder with marble columns. This is where the Roman elite go to get their violence fix. Front row seats to muscular strangers smashing each other to pieces under the hot Italian sun. And at the center of it all, the ludus, or gladiator school. Imagine a prison crossed with a gym, sprinkled with blood and shouting. That's where Spartacus finds himself. And trust me, this place is not for motivational posters and protein shakes. He's marched through stone corridors where screams echo like background music. Wooden swords clang against bone. The air is thick with dust, iron, and the sour tang of fear. Every inch of the place is designed to break you down, to suck out your humanity and pump you full of violence. Meet the doctors. These guys are ex-gladiators turned trainers, and they are not here for your emotional growth. They teach one thing: kill fast, or die slower. Footwork, blade angle, shield use, everything is broken down into brutal drills. Step wrong, and you're eating sand. Show attitude, and you're getting a whip across the back. Spartacus? He doesn't just survive this. He thrives in it. Not because he loves violence, but because he learns fast, adapts faster, and never lets them see him crack. He watches the others, Gauls, Syrians, Africans, men who were generals, raiders, poets even, now reduced to meet with names like Crixus or Draba. Some rage against their chains. Some try to suck up to their masters. Spartacus? He stays quiet. Watches. Waits. The training is relentless. Mornings start with marching until your feet bleed. Afternoons are sword practice, shield drills, sandbag strikes, more marching. And if you screw up? Nighttime comes with extra beatings or, worse, isolation in the ergastulum, a deep, dark pit under the ludus that smells like mildew and broken dreams. Food, if you can call it that. Mostly barley gruel and dry bread, gladiator fuel, they call it. You don't eat for pleasure. You eat so your muscles don't fall off. Baths are rare. Mercy, rarer. Friendship, dangerous. Still, bonds form. Especially with the ones who have a glint in their eye, like Crixus, the Gaul with a body like a battering ram and a brain sharper than he lets on. Or Enamors, the African with scars that tell whole novels. They don't talk much, but they nod at each other. And that's all Spartacus needs. Then there's Batiatus, the owner. He strolls through the courtyard like he's picking racehorses. He's rich, oily, and loves to lecture about discipline while sipping watered wine from a gold goblet. To him, these men are investments. He feeds them, trains them, and sells them off to the highest bidder for matches across the empire. The more blood they spill, the higher the price. And Spartacus? He's worth a fortune waiting to be made. One day, they throw him into a sparring match with a beast of a man wielding a trident and net, a retiarius. It's supposed to be practice. No real blades. But this guy doesn't care. He goes for the kill. Spartacus sidesteps, catches the net, spins it back at him, and clocks the guy so hard he drops like a sack of rotten figs. The courtyard goes silent. The trainers mutter. One of them, Marcellus, actually laughs. He fights like he remembers what freedom tastes like, he says. Spartacus doesn't smile. He's already turning away. Later, in the cramped sleeping quarters, one of the newer recruits asks him where he learned to fight like that. Spartacus just shrugs. You learn fast when you're not allowed to lose. That line spreads. Soon, the others look at him differently. Not just as another captive, but as a storm brewing. Someone who might not just survive this nightmare, but flip the whole thing on its head. Meanwhile, Rome keeps watching. Gladiator fights aren't just sport, they're state-approved distraction therapy. Give the masses blood, and they'll forget the corruption, the wars, the taxes. And Spartacus? He's being groomed to be the next big star. Batiatus is already planning his debut at a festival in Neapolis. Big money, big crowd, big mistake. Because something inside Spartacus is shifting. That low-burning rage is starting to boil. Every drop of sweat in training, every bruise, every lash, it's fuel. He doesn't want a better sell. He doesn't want fame. He wants out. But not just for himself. He's watching, counting, gauging weaknesses. He knows when the guards change. He knows which doors creak and which ones don't. He knows that in the kitchen, under a pile of rotting onions, there's a collection of cleavers just waiting to become freedom tools. He's not ready yet. But soon. Very soon. Morning in the ludus begins with the clang of a bell and the shuffle of bare feet on stone. The gladiators rise without complaint. No one dares test the patience of the trainers. There is no breakfast, no warmth, no conversation, only discipline and the steady thrum of dread. The yard fills with the sound of weapons drawn, barked commands, and the dull thuds of wooden swords colliding against shields. Spartacus trains alongside the others, his body pushed past the point of exhaustion, his mind always sharp. The drills are relentless: parry, lunge, block, strike. Day after day, the same movements, the same routine. And yet, it becomes clear he is different. Where others break under pressure, Spartacus only hardens. His strength grows, but so does his awareness, of patterns, of people, of opportunity. The Lannister, the head trainer, watches him closely. Spartacus is too good to ignore. Every swing of his arm, every shift in stance, shows a fighter shaped not just by training but by survival. He isn't performing to impress. He is preparing. Soon, he is called to the arena, not a grand amphitheater, but a small, private ring where wealthy patrons come to assess new recruits. The audience sits in shaded comfort while the gladiators wait behind iron bars, exposed to the sun and the heat of the sand. When the gate rises, Spartacus walks forward with a calm focus. Across from him, another man, similarly armed, eyes narrowed. The match begins at once. No ceremony. No hesitation. The rhythm of the fight is brutal and quick. Every strike feels final. The crowd leans in as blades clash, dust kicks up, and sweat mixes with blood. But Spartacus doesn't just fight, he calculates. He sees patterns in the other man's movements and exploits them. Within moments, the opponent stumbles, falters, falls. The crowd erupts in approval. The trainers nod. Spartacus is victorious, but he feels no satisfaction. The man he defeated was a fellow captive, not an enemy. This isn't freedom. It's performance. Over the next few weeks, Spartacus fights again. And again. Each victory builds his reputation. Batiatus is pleased. His new investment is already drawing attention from Rome. Word spreads. The crowds grow. Spartacus is no longer a name. He is a spectacle. But behind the eyes of the audience, Spartacus sees something else. Disinterest. Detachment. To them, he is not a man. He is a thing, an object of entertainment, nothing more. It solidifies something within him. This system, this life, it cannot be endured forever. It must be escaped. In the confines of the sleeping quarters, quiet conversations begin. A few words exchanged between trusted allies. Nothing direct. Nothing traceable. Just questions. Who is willing to risk everything? Who still remembers what it means to live free? Crixus, the Gaul, listens. He is proud, fierce, and suspicious of Spartacus at first. But over time, something like trust begins to form. They are not friends, there's little space for that, but they are bound by a shared understanding. They were not born to die for sport. The days grow more tense. Fights in the yard become more dangerous. The trainers push harder, sensing unrest. The guards begin to watch more closely. Even Batiatus, with his smooth smile and confident air, seems to notice the shift. But it's too late. The plan is already forming. In the kitchen, the cleavers are counted. In the training yard, the guards' patterns are memorized. Spartacus knows which men will fight beside him and which will hesitate. He also knows hesitation will mean death. They wait for the right moment, one when the guards are distracted, the weapons accessible, and the will to act stronger than the fear of failure. That moment comes sooner than expected. A shipment of new recruits arrives, rough men from the frontier, barely broken in. The guards are busy. The kitchen is short-staffed. And one of the cleavers is left on the counter, just within reach. Spartacus moves first. The cleaver is silent, but its effect is immediate. The alarm spreads, and within seconds, chaos erupts. Chains break. Blades flash. Shouts ring out across the compound. The guards are overwhelmed, unprepared for the speed and coordination of the attack. Spartacus and the others fight with desperation and clarity. Every strike is purposeful. Every escape route is burned into memory. By nightfall, 70 men break through the walls and vanish into the countryside. Not all survive. Some fall in the escape, cut down as they run. But most do. And they carry with them more than just stolen weapons. They carry a new sense of purpose. No longer slaves. No longer gladiators. Now, they are something else entirely. They disappear into the hills, Spartacus and his small group of escapees, carrying what little they can, armed with scavenged weapons, fueled by urgency. Every mile they put between themselves and Capua is earned through aching feet and sleepless nights. They know Rome will send men. They know pursuit is inevitable. But for now, they are free. And that changes everything. They travel light and move fast, avoiding the main roads and slipping through villages in the early morning mist. Some offer help. Most turn away. Fear of Roman punishment runs deep. Still, they find shelter when they can. Abandoned farmhouses, caves, old shrines to forgotten gods. These places become their sanctuaries, if only for a night. Mount Vesuvius rises in the distance, looming above the Bay of Naples like a silent sentinel. To the men, it looks like safety. Its steep sides offer visibility, natural barriers, and a defensible position. Spartacus leads them up, higher and higher, until they find a narrow plateau with a clear view of the valley below. From here, they can see everything: the fields, the roads, the movements of Roman patrols. They build crude defenses from rocks and branches, set lookouts, and wait. More men arrive. Word of the escape spreads like smoke through the countryside. Some are runaway slaves, others are shepherds or local laborers who have nothing to lose. They bring news, weapons, stolen supplies, and with them, stories of injustice that mirror Spartacus's own. Soon, the group grows from 70 to hundreds. They speak different languages, follow different gods, and carry different scars. But they share the same truth: they've all been crushed under the same boot. And now they've found a man willing to stand up and fight back. Spartacus doesn't declare himself leader. He simply becomes it. He listens more than he speaks. He doesn't promise riches or revenge. What he offers is a chance to choose their own path, a rare thing in their world. They train. Not like gladiators, but like warriors. They practice in shifts, morning drills, evening formations. Men who once knew only farming or stonework now learn to hold a shield, to move in lines, to fight together. Crixus, Enamors, and others help shape them, sharing the techniques beaten into them at the Ludus. Weapons are limited. They forge what they can. Spears from broom handles. Shields from wagon wheels. For some, it's a rusty sickle or a broken kitchen knife. Still, it's enough. Enough to remind them they are no longer defenseless. Rome, at first, does not take them seriously. A few runaway slaves, hiding on a mountain, hardly worth more than a militia. 2 praetors are sent with small forces to handle the situation. They climb the slopes confidently, expecting an easy victory. They find something else entirely. Spartacus waits until they commit, until the Romans think they've won. Then he strikes from behind, using narrow paths known only to locals and terrain their disciplined legions don't understand. The results are decisive. Roman forces are routed. Their supplies taken. Their pride shattered. For the first time, a slave army has not just survived, it has defeated Rome in the open field. The psychological effect ripples far beyond the battlefield. In villas across Italy, slave owners glance over their shoulders. In Rome, senators argue over who allowed this embarrassment. Meanwhile, on the slopes of Vesuvius, the victors bury their dead, tend to the wounded, and begin to understand the scale of what they've begun. They are no longer fugitives. They are insurgents. Rebels. A rising threat. Still, Spartacus remains focused. He does not rush. Instead, he fortifies their position, accepts new recruits cautiously, and continues training. He studies captured Roman maps, listens to scouts, and adjusts his tactics. Every decision is measured. Every movement calculated. The men around him begin to believe that this is more than survival. It's transformation. They're becoming something new, an army of the forgotten, rising from the soil of Italy itself. At night, the fires burn on the mountainside. The sound of laughter, conversation, and hammering iron fills the air. Some dream of returning home. Others dream of revenge. A few begin to believe that maybe, just maybe, Rome itself could be broken. Spartacus listens, observes, and prepares. He knows what's coming. Victory has bought them time, but not peace. The next Roman force will be larger, better trained, and more determined. The real test is yet to come. But on the slopes of Vesuvius, under the stars, among men who had once been chained and beaten, a sense of unity begins to grow. And Spartacus, once a nameless slave, is becoming a symbol. The mountain that once served as refuge begins to feel like a trap. The numbers have grown. Over 1,000 men now crowd the slopes of Vesuvius, but so have the problems. Supplies are harder to come by. The Romans have started blocking roads, pressuring nearby villages, cutting off access to food and tools. The early triumphs, though real, have brought Rome's attention. Spartacus knows they cannot stay on the mountain forever. The high ground that protected them now limits them. They need to move, soon, or be surrounded and starved. Then, word reaches them. 2 Roman praetors, Publius Varinius and Lucius Cassinius, are closing in, bringing with them nearly 3,000 well-armed men. Their orders are clear: crush the rebellion, capture Spartacus alive if possible, and make a public example of him. The rebels ready themselves. Makeshift armor is passed down, weapons are sharpened, shields patched with leather and cloth. The mood is grim but resolute. They know what's at stake. If they're caught, they won't be enslaved again. They'll be crucified. The Romans surround the base of the mountain, confident the rebels have nowhere to run. They set camp, blockade the paths, and wait. No need to charge up steep terrain, they'll starve the enemy out. The praetors believe the victory is already theirs. But Spartacus refuses to be boxed in. The very mountain meant to hold them becomes his weapon. He orders his men to gather vines and branches. They weave ropes, long and strong, and lower themselves down the sheer cliffs at night, steep, dangerous, and completely unguarded. While the Romans sleep, convinced of their safety, the rebels slip past them, one by one, like shadows. By dawn, the Roman camp is silent. Until it isn't. Spartacus strikes from behind, catching the legions completely off guard. Fires erupt, tents collapse, and panic spreads through the ranks. The discipline of the legions crumbles under the weight of surprise. Soldiers break formation, some fleeing, others falling. The battle is over before it begins. The rebels seize supplies, armor, weapons, and horses. Spartacus doesn't pursue the survivors. He lets them run, knowing they'll carry the story back to Rome. The slave general did not wait for death, he brought it to them. From this moment, the rebellion shifts. No longer a desperate band of fugitives, Spartacus now commands a force with arms, food, and strategy. They move quickly through the countryside, avoiding cities but striking Roman supply routes, recruiting along the way. Every small victory brings more followers. Some are escaped slaves. Others are poor farmers, resentful of Roman taxes. Even former soldiers join, disillusioned by Rome's failure to protect its own. By autumn, his force has swelled to more than 10,000 men. Spartacus keeps the group moving. Camps are set, then abandoned. Roman patrols chase ghosts. Scouts return confused. No one can predict where the rebel army will go next. But Spartacus has a plan. He doesn't want to overthrow Rome, not yet. His goal is escape. If he can lead the army north, through the Alps, they can scatter into the provinces, Gaul, Thrace, Germania. Home, for many of them. The march begins. They move like a tide through central Italy. Cities close their gates. Some send soldiers, others simply pray. Roman officials write frantic letters to the Senate. The fear spreads faster than the rebels themselves. Still, Spartacus remains measured. He avoids large towns and chooses his battles carefully. He forbids unnecessary violence. Villages that do not resist are left untouched. Looting is controlled. Discipline is enforced not through brutality but through respect. He knows that what they're building isn't just a rebellion, it's a reputation. And reputations, once damaged, can collapse faster than any army. Crixus, however, begins to grow restless. He wants to strike Rome directly, to take the fight to the heart of the Republic. The debate simmers beneath the surface. Some follow Spartacus for escape. Others, like Crixus, dream of conquest. For now, the army stays united. But the divide is forming. And Rome, humiliated by each defeat, begins to understand what it's facing. No more small detachments. No more underestimating the rebels. They begin mobilizing larger legions, led by more seasoned commanders. The war is no longer a sideshow, it's a threat to the very stability of the Republic. Spartacus can sense the change. The victories are real, but the danger is growing. The escape route is long and uncertain. He has bought time, but how much, no one can say. Still, under the open sky, with miles behind them and hope flickering like campfire flames, the men march north. They are no longer slaves. They are soldiers. The slopes of Mount Vesuvius are far behind them now. Spartacus and his army move northward through Italy, slipping past Roman outposts, weaving through valleys and across rivers. What began as an act of desperation is becoming something more organized, more focused. The numbers continue to grow. Thousands of men, some with wives and children in tow, have joined the march. A former slave revolt is evolving into a full-scale migration, armed, mobile, and unpredictable. Spartacus understands what this means. The longer they move together, the harder it becomes to feed and protect everyone. The Roman response will grow more severe. What was once seen as a disturbance has now become a military concern for the Senate. Scouts report that new legions are being raised. Roads are closing behind them. The route to the Alps is narrowing. Still, they press forward. Villages along the way react in different ways. Some surrender instantly, providing food and tools in exchange for safety. Others resist, and are quickly overwhelmed. Spartacus maintains control. He orders that civilians be spared when possible. He punishes looting and cruelty. His goal is not to mimic the brutality they all escaped from. He wants his army to stand for something more than vengeance. But keeping order is not easy. Factions begin to form within the ranks. Crixus and a number of Gauls speak more openly now of turning back. Rome, they argue, is vulnerable. It has been embarrassed, outmaneuvered, and shamed. Why run when they could strike? Spartacus disagrees. His instincts are still defensive. He believes the road through the Alps offers the best chance for lasting freedom. Fighting Rome on its own soil, with limited supplies and an army made of untrained men, would be suicide. The arguments grow louder, and eventually, the division becomes real. Crixus and thousands of his followers break off, heading south again, hoping to plunder and pressure Rome into chaos. Spartacus is left with a smaller but more focused force. He doesn't speak poorly of Crixus, only expresses regret. He knows that unity was their strength. Now, they've lost it. Within weeks, news reaches them. Crixus has been defeated. His force was intercepted and crushed by Roman legions. Survivors were executed. Crixus himself was killed in battle. His body left unburied as a warning. Spartacus mourns his old comrade. They had disagreed, but their cause had been shared. In his honor, Spartacus holds a funeral, unusual for an army constantly on the move. Gladiators who knew him build a pyre and burn it under the stars. It's a quiet moment in the midst of an increasingly loud conflict. Then, almost without pause, the march continues. They reach the Apennines, winding through mountain passes and enduring early snowfalls. Supplies run low. The Roman roads, once taken for granted, are no longer safe. Armies are reported in the north, blocking access to the Alpine passes. For a time, the dream of escape flickers. But Spartacus doesn't allow despair to take root. He reorganizes the army, dividing it into units, assigning commanders, establishing routines. What was once a loose band of runaways is now a functioning military force. They build winter camps, establish supply lines, and set up rotating patrols. Even in the mountains, Spartacus continues to plan. He studies the terrain, tests weak spots in Roman defenses, and considers every route, every possible exit from the tightening circle around them. Then something strange happens. Instead of continuing toward the Alps, the army begins to drift south again. Historians have argued endlessly about this decision. Did Spartacus lose faith in the northern route? Were the passes truly blocked beyond reach? Or did his army, tired of retreating, begin to push him toward confrontation? We may never know for sure. But the result is clear. By the spring of 72 BCE, Spartacus turns his army back towards central and southern Italy. He raids Roman estates with precision, not for destruction, but for survival. They seize livestock, grains, blacksmith tools. The army becomes a moving village, fully self-sufficient, entirely disconnected from Rome's economy. Even some free peasants begin to admire him. His army, for all its scars, offers food and safety in a time when both are hard to come by. Rome responds with more force. A new general is sent, Lucius Gellius, with multiple legions. Another is dispatched in support, Gnaeus Cornelius Lentulus Clodianus. The Senate wants Spartacus crushed from both sides. Spartacus does not retreat. Instead, he attacks, first one legion, then the other, defeating both in rapid succession. Roman pride takes another deep blow. The Senate is shaken. More than 20,000 of their men have now fallen to the army of a former slave. Still, Spartacus does not claim victory. He doesn't crown himself, doesn't declare war on the Republic, doesn't march on Rome. He stays mobile, pragmatic, careful. But each victory makes escape harder. The Roman response grows more serious with each passing week. Spartacus has proven he can win battles, but he knows the war is a different question entirely. And as his army expands again, back into the tens of thousands, so does its burden. Leadership now means not just fighting, but feeding. Not just surviving, but choosing the path forward when none seems safe. The Roman Senate can no longer afford to treat Spartacus as a temporary disturbance. Too many legions have been defeated. Too many commanders have returned to Rome in shame. With each failure, the rebellion seems less like an anomaly and more like a mirror, one reflecting Rome's own internal weaknesses. So they change their approach. No more minor praetors. No more underestimating the enemy. This time, the Republic turns to a man they trust with wealth, experience, and ambition, Marcus Licinius Crassus. Crassus is not like the other commanders. He is not noble by birth, but he is powerful by design. A ruthless financier, he made his fortune buying burning buildings and selling them back to the desperate owners once the flames were extinguished. He is methodical, disciplined, and most of all, he sees Spartacus not as a nuisance, but as a genuine threat to the stability of Rome. He accepts the command with a cold determination. Where others had hesitated, Crassus acts quickly. He raises 6 new legions and restores order with harsh discipline. Soldiers who flee battle are executed, often by decimation, a brutal punishment in which 1 in 10 men is killed by their own comrades. Morale is maintained through fear, and the message is clear: retreat is no longer an option. Meanwhile, Spartacus continues his southern march. His army is massive now, some say over 50,000 men, though many are not trained fighters. The logistical challenge is enormous. Food, shelter, discipline, it all becomes harder to manage. The leadership circle tightens, and trust becomes more difficult to extend. Yet Spartacus remains the central figure, the one constant. He learns of Crassus's appointment and prepares accordingly. The skirmishes become more strategic. Instead of outright battle, Spartacus leads his men in swift attacks, then disappears before Roman reinforcements arrive. He knows this new commander won't make the same mistakes. The terrain of southern Italy becomes both shield and obstacle. Hills and forests provide cover, but also complicate movement. Scouts report increased Roman activity. Supply lines are being fortified, roads monitored, key bridges watched. Crassus is tightening the net. Spartacus tries to break through. He heads toward Brundisium, a major port in the heel of Italy. The plan is to negotiate with pirates, Cilician mercenaries who operate along the coast. If Spartacus can secure ships, he might evacuate his army across the Adriatic, perhaps to Greece or even Asia Minor. The sea offers the last great hope for escape. The negotiations are tense and costly. The pirates demand treasure in advance. Spartacus agrees, sending them gold and promises. Days pass, then weeks, but the ships never come. Whether the pirates betrayed him, took the gold and vanished, or were intercepted by Roman forces remains unknown. What is certain is this: the coast remains sealed. The dream of escape over water fades into silence. Trapped in the south, Spartacus turns back inland. Crassus sees the opportunity. He orders a deep trench, fortified with stakes and watchtowers, built across the narrow land between the Tyrrhenian Sea and the Ionian coast. A physical barrier meant to box Spartacus in, to starve him out. A wall not of stone, but of iron and intent. For weeks, Spartacus tests the defenses. The Roman lines hold. Then, during a night of storm and chaos, Spartacus seizes his chance. He selects a portion of the Roman line weakened by the weather, masses his forces silently, and breaks through. Not all escape. Some remain trapped. But Spartacus and a significant portion of his army slip through once again. It's a tactical success, but a strategic loss. Each escape grows harder. Each battle costs more. The rebels are no longer an expanding force. They're being worn down. The men begin to feel it. Some desert. Others question their leaders. The losses begin to show not just on the battlefield, but in the eyes of those who remain. Still, Spartacus endures. He reorganizes, redirects. There is talk of heading north again, perhaps another shot at the Alps. Others urge a last campaign against Rome itself, a final strike before the army dissolves. But the options are narrowing. Crassus presses closer, more relentless with each day. And now, he is not the only threat. Rome, sensing Crassus's struggle to finish the job, authorizes Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, Pompey the Great, to return from Spain and assist. Though Spartacus does not yet face him directly, the implications are clear. Now two of Rome's most dangerous generals are moving toward him. Spartacus looks at his maps. He studies the reports. And somewhere, perhaps in the quiet of a late evening, he accepts a truth few in his army dare speak aloud. There will be no escape. Not by sea. Not by mountain. Not anymore. What remains is choice. Where to stand. When to fight. And how to end this story, with surrender, or with resistance. For Spartacus, that choice is already made. Spartacus gathers what remains of his army, tired men, weather-worn and many wounded, but still standing. Still loyal. Though cracks are forming, his presence alone holds the rebellion together. They look to him not just as a commander, but as a symbol of everything they've survived. In the eyes of many, he is freedom made flesh. But the dream is shifting. This is no longer an uprising looking for victory. It's becoming a last stand. Still, Spartacus doesn't surrender to despair. He regroups his men in the rolling hills of Lucania, a region of fertile valleys and rugged highlands, south of Rome's heartland. Here, he sets about forging one final army. Not the largest, not the best equipped, but hardened by years of struggle, and willing to face death rather than kneel again. He divides his forces into smaller units, pairing veterans with the less experienced. He keeps discipline sharp but avoids cruelty. He walks among the men, eats the same food, sleeps in the same dirt. It's not just strategy, it's belief. He believes in the cause, even now. And some still believe escape is possible. The numbers, though, tell a different story. Crassus is closing in with full force, over 50,000 Roman soldiers, better trained and better armed. And he's building alliances. One of Spartacus' commanders, Gannicus, leads a splinter group that separates from the main body. Some believe it was a tactical move, others suspect dissent. Either way, the rebels are no longer unified. Meanwhile, Pompey is marching south from Hispania, his legions fresh and dangerous. Though he hasn't engaged Spartacus directly, he sends out messages to the Senate, angling for glory. Crassus, sensing that his moment of recognition is slipping away, grows more aggressive. He pushes his men harder. He wants Spartacus, dead or broken, before Pompey can steal the final blow. Spartacus understands the stakes. He tries one last gamble, an attack on Crassus's forces. A swift strike meant to fracture the Roman lines and carve open a path north, or at least to destabilize the siege. But Crassus anticipates the move. He fortifies his camp and forces Spartacus into a conventional fight. The battle is brutal. Not the final one, yet, but the worst so far. Hundreds die. Some say Spartacus is wounded, though the details blur in the chaos. He retreats to regroup, but the message is clear: the rebellion's strength is fading fast. And yet, he still has followers. Some join out of desperation, others out of genuine belief. Even Roman slaves continue to flee their masters and seek him out, joining what has now become a wandering resistance movement. In quieter moments, Spartacus walks the edges of his camp. He listens to the stories of his men, tales of families left behind, of punishments endured, of the lives they dreamed of building once this war was won. He carries their stories with him. They're his weight, and his reason. As the days shorten and the nights grow colder, the army moves one last time. North, toward the Salaris River. It's not a strategic location. It's not a defensible stronghold. But it's open, and it's away from the coasts where Crassus controls every outlet. Spartacus knows that his choices are gone. This is not where he wants the war to end. It's just where it has to. Some of his generals argue for a split, disperse the army, let small bands fade into the countryside. Spartacus refuses. He won't vanish into myth without a fight. He won't let the story end in whispers and shadows. His rebellion deserves an ending carved in fire. He orders the weapons counted, the horses fed, the wounded tended. There will be no retreat from this next encounter. No second chances. Everything they have left will be poured into one last confrontation. As word spreads through the ranks, something strange happens. Fear, yes. Uncertainty, of course. But also, clarity. Men who were once chained and beaten now take up blades of their own choosing. They stand in loose formations and speak of the lives they reclaimed, even for a moment. Some sharpen their weapons. Others whisper final prayers. And in every heart, a quiet resolve begins to take root. They may fall, but they will fall on their terms. Spartacus steps into the middle of the camp, among his people. No armor of gold. No throne. Just a sword, a scarred face, and a presence shaped by everything they've endured. He speaks little. He doesn't promise survival. He promises meaning. That is enough. They prepare for dawn. Beyond the horizon, Crassus advances. And behind him, Pompey is not far. Dawn breaks with a cold wind drifting across the Salaris plain. Spartacus stands at the edge of his camp, watching the faint mist rise off the earth like breath from a sleeping beast. This will be the last day. He feels it, not as dread, but as a simple fact. The rebellion has reached the edge of the world, and there is nowhere left to run. Crassus, methodical and relentless, has encircled them. The Roman legions form a crescent wall of iron and discipline, their ranks unwavering. To the south, Pompey's shadow looms. Though his men are not yet present, the threat of his arrival seals off any imagined escape. Spartacus and his rebels are trapped. But they are not broken. He walks the camp once more, his boots grinding over frost-hardened earth. There are fewer now than before. Estimates place his army around 30,000, but each man and woman here has chosen to remain. Veterans of countless battles. Escaped slaves. Farmers who picked up arms. People who, even in the face of overwhelming force, refuse to kneel. And Spartacus? He sharpens his sword. He doesn't dress like a general. No polished breastplate, no plumed helmet. Just the gear of a soldier, weathered leather, metal greaves, a blood-stained tunic. He knows the terrain offers little advantage. Open fields. No cover. Nowhere to hide. But he doesn't intend to hide. He means to strike. To fight. To go down not as a fugitive, but as a warrior. Some say he delivers a final speech. That he rides along the line and calls out to his fighters, reminding them of what they've done, how they stood against the empire and made it tremble. Others say he simply lifts his sword, and in the silence that follows, the entire camp understands. There's no certainty about the details that follow. Ancient accounts contradict each other, and memory blurs in the heat of death. But here is what we can piece together. The battle begins with a charge. Spartacus leads it himself. A full frontal assault on Crassus's center, a move both bold and reckless. His cavalry, what remains of it, surges forward. Behind them, foot soldiers scream out their final defiance. The Roman lines absorb the impact, disciplined as ever. Shields lock. Spears brace. The first wave of rebels crashes against them like a wave against a cliff. But Spartacus breaks through. With a core group of warriors, he punches a hole in the Roman front. He fights like a man possessed. One source claims he personally kills 2 centurions and reaches Crassus's personal guard. Another insists he was searching for Crassus himself, trying to end the battle with one blow. The details may be exaggerated, but the heart of it is real. Spartacus fights his way deep into enemy lines. Even after his horse is cut down beneath him, he continues on foot. Surrounded, wounded, possibly in the leg, possibly in the side, he refuses to fall back. His men follow his example. The battle stretches across hours. The field becomes a ruin of trampled bodies, shattered spears, and scorched ground. Rebel formations break, regroup, and break again. The Romans press forward, ruthless and cold. And then it happens. The center collapses. The rebel army, exhausted and scattered, begins to fall apart. With no reinforcements, no supplies, and no route of escape, their resistance dissolves into chaos. Spartacus is last seen fighting among a knot of bodies. Some say he is struck down by a javelin. Others claim he's surrounded and overwhelmed by Roman infantry. And then, nothing. No body is recovered. No burial is recorded. Spartacus vanishes. But his impact does not. The battlefield is littered with the fallen. Over 6,000 rebels are captured alive. Crassus, sending a clear message, has them crucified along the Appian Way, a long, grisly road stretching from Capua to Rome, now lined with corpses as a warning to any who might dream of rebellion. Rome believes the threat is ended. But something strange happens. Even as the rebellion is crushed, Spartacus begins to live in another form, in stories, in whispers, in warnings. Soldiers speak of his final charge. Slaves speak of his name in the shadows, like a talisman. He becomes a symbol, not of failure, but of courage. And perhaps most telling of all, no Roman takes personal credit for killing him. Crassus gains political clout, but not the glory he hoped for. Pompey returns just in time to claim the mop-up, and the Senate praises him. The rivalry between the two generals deepens, but Spartacus, who was supposed to be forgotten, remains the center of the story. For Rome, the revolt becomes a scar. For others, it becomes a legend. And though the man is gone, the rebellion he led plants something deep in the roots of the empire, a sense that resistance is possible, that even the smallest, most broken life can rise and leave a mark too large to erase. Spartacus didn't live to see it, but he changed the story anyway. In the aftermath, Rome works hard to bury the memory of Spartacus, not just his name, but the ideas he stirred. The crucifixions along the Appian Way stand as grim monuments, intended to silence any spark of rebellion. Slaves are watched more closely, their lives more tightly controlled. The Senate passes laws to tighten discipline and crack down on escape attempts. But repression can only go so far. Among the common people, Spartacus becomes something different, a symbol of hope, a figure whispered about in secret gatherings and at dimly lit hearths. Stories spread about the gladiator who dared to challenge the greatest power of his age, who forged an army from the broken and led them into battle. Poets and storytellers start weaving his tale into legend. Some portray him as a hero of the oppressed, others as a dangerous outlaw. The truth, as always, sits somewhere in between. Roman soldiers who fought him speak of his charisma and leadership, the way his men fought not just for survival, but for freedom. Historians of the day try to paint him as a mere criminal, but even they admit his skill on the battlefield was extraordinary. In the decades that follow, Spartacus's rebellion inspires not just fear, but admiration. It becomes a cautionary tale for Rome's elites and a beacon for those who long to be free. Over time, the story transcends its origins. It spreads beyond Italy, reaching distant provinces where slaves dream of escape. It echoes in the annals of history as a testament to the enduring human spirit. Spartacus's life, though cut short, reminds us that even in the darkest times, courage can ignite change. His story endures not because he won battles or toppled empires, but because he dared to fight back when the world told him he had no right to. He became more than a man. He became a legend. The final battle is behind them, but the echoes of defeat linger like a stubborn shadow. Spartacus's surviving followers are scattered, wounded, and weary. The rebellion has been crushed, its dream dashed on the hard stones of Roman might. Yet the story does not end with swords sheathed or bodies buried in silence. Instead, it moves quietly into whispers, secrets, and the stubborn heartbeat of resistance that refuses to die. In the weeks after the defeat, small groups of rebels slip away under cover of darkness. They scatter into the hills, the forests, and the farms of Italy. Some return to their old lives, though changed forever. Others vanish into the margins, carrying the legacy of Spartacus with them like a flickering torch in the night. Among these scattered remnants are men and women who refuse to forget. They become living reminders that the revolt was not just a moment, but a movement. These survivors, often hunted by Roman patrols, spread stories of courage and defiance. The name Spartacus becomes a rallying cry, a symbol of hope to those still chained by slavery or oppression. Meanwhile, Rome tightens its grip. Laws grow harsher. Slave owners increase their vigilance. The empire invests more resources into surveillance and control. Yet, despite these efforts, the spark ignited by Spartacus continues to flicker in the hearts of the oppressed. Over time, Spartacus's legend transcends borders and generations. His life is told and retold, sometimes as a cautionary tale, sometimes as an inspiration. Poets and historians debate his motives and methods. Was he merely a desperate rebel? Or was he a visionary leader, a man ahead of his time? The answer is complex. Spartacus was both. A slave and a soldier. A fighter shaped by brutal circumstances and driven by an unyielding desire for freedom. His rebellion challenged the very foundations of Roman society and exposed the fragility hidden beneath the empire's grandeur. In the centuries that follow, Spartacus's story becomes a powerful symbol in cultural memory. His fight against tyranny echoes in the struggles of those seeking justice and equality. From slave revolts to civil rights movements, his name is invoked as a reminder that resistance is possible, even against overwhelming odds. Though the man himself disappeared into history's fog, the movement he led changed the course of time. Spartacus's rebellion forced Rome to confront the realities of slavery, power, and rebellion. It revealed the strength found in unity and the price paid for freedom. And so, even in defeat, Spartacus remains immortal, not in marble statues or grand monuments, but in the spirit of those who dare to stand against oppression. After the rebellion's violent end, the Roman Republic did not forget Spartacus, or the chaos he had unleashed. The Senate poured resources into tightening control over slaves and boosting military presence throughout Italy. Yet, despite the harsh reprisals and public crucifixions meant to deter future uprisings, the very fact that Spartacus's revolt occurred left an indelible mark on Roman society. The fear of slave rebellion now hovered over Rome like a persistent fog. Slave owners tightened their grip, but many also became more cautious, realizing that the human spirit, once ignited, could be a force far beyond chains and whips. Laws were adjusted to increase punishments, but some senators also pushed for reforms, fearing that cruelty might provoke further unrest. Meanwhile, the surviving rebels, scattered and hunted, carried Spartacus's legacy quietly across the empire. Some escaped to distant provinces, while others remained hidden within communities, awaiting a better moment to rise again. The story of the gladiator who dared to stand up to Rome became a whispered legend, shared by slaves and common folk alike. Historians writing decades later debated Spartacus's motivations and leadership style. Was he a freedom fighter with a vision for a new society, or a desperate man leading a doomed rebellion? The truth is somewhere in between. Spartacus was a man shaped by brutal circumstances, who seized a rare chance to strike back against a system designed to keep him down. His rebellion exposed deep vulnerabilities in Rome's social order. It forced the elite to reconsider the institution of slavery and the ever-present danger of uprising. The revolt also altered military strategy. Commanders became more vigilant about training, recruitment, and rapid response to internal threats. In the cultural imagination, Spartacus came to symbolize more than just a slave revolt. He embodied resistance to oppression, courage in the face of overwhelming odds, and the enduring desire for freedom. His story inspired countless later movements and became a touchstone for anyone who faced injustice. Though the man himself vanished into history's shadows, Spartacus's spirit lived on. His life and rebellion remain a powerful reminder that even those deemed powerless can challenge empires, and, sometimes, change the course of history. The ripple effects of Spartacus's uprising spread far beyond the battlefields of Italy. For Rome, the revolt was both a warning and a lesson, a stark reminder that beneath the veneer of civilization lurked deep tensions that could erupt at any moment. The Senate's response was multifaceted: harsher slave laws, increased military presence, and political maneuvering aimed at stabilizing the restless republic. Yet, despite the brutal suppression, the rebellion fundamentally challenged Rome's view of itself. Here was a former gladiator who had united the oppressed, defeated legions, and threatened the heart of the empire. Spartacus's story unsettled the ruling classes, forcing them to confront uncomfortable truths about power, control, and humanity. In the provinces, tales of the revolt circulated widely, becoming a source of both fear and fascination. Slaveholders increased their vigilance, but some began to question the sustainability of the system itself. Could such a fragile foundation endure indefinitely? The answer, history shows, was no. Spartacus also left a legacy in military history. His tactics, using guerrilla warfare, exploiting terrain, maintaining high mobility, challenged Rome's traditional battle methods. Future generals studied his campaigns, learning how a smaller, less equipped force could outmaneuver the mightiest armies of their time. Culturally, Spartacus became a symbol that transcended his era. His rebellion inspired countless works of art, literature, and philosophy over the centuries. From Renaissance paintings to modern films, his image has been invoked as the ultimate emblem of resistance against oppression. In the grand tapestry of history, Spartacus represents the indomitable human spirit's refusal to accept servitude. His story is not just about battles won or lost, but about the enduring quest for dignity and freedom. Through his life and legacy, the message remains clear: even the most marginalized can challenge the status quo and leave a lasting impact. As the decades pass, Spartacus's revolt becomes more than history. It evolves into legend. His story is told and retold, sometimes embellished, sometimes stripped to its barest truths, but always resonant. People across the Roman world, especially those oppressed and enslaved, find in Spartacus a figure who embodies their hope and struggle. His name becomes a rallying cry for freedom long after the last spear is cast. The idea of a slave who rose, fought, and nearly toppled Rome feeds imaginations and inspires resistance in various forms. Revolts occur here and there, some small, others more organized, but all echoing the spirit of Spartacus's rebellion. In the political arena, Spartacus's uprising is a cautionary tale. Rome's leaders recognize the dangers of unchecked power resting on the backs of the enslaved. Over time, gradual reforms begin, though slow and limited, to address some of the systemic abuses. The very fabric of Roman society shifts, pressured by the memory of what could happen when oppression meets rebellion. Artists and writers immortalize Spartacus as a tragic hero, a man fighting not just against chains, but against fate itself. His life story sparks philosophical discussions about justice, freedom, and the cost of rebellion. These debates ripple through the centuries, influencing thinkers far beyond ancient Rome. Even today, Spartacus's legacy lives on. His rebellion serves as a powerful reminder that the desire for freedom is universal and timeless. Whether in books, films, or political discourse, Spartacus stands as a testament to resilience and courage. Through the ages, his story invites us to reflect on the meaning of liberty, the nature of power, and the strength of the human will. It reminds us that history is not just written by the victors but shaped by those who dare to resist. As the sun sets on the ancient world, Spartacus's story settles into the folds of history, not as a mere footnote, but as a lasting legacy that transcends time. The man who once rose from the chains of slavery to lead thousands in defiance of Rome becomes a symbol for all who yearn for freedom and justice. Through centuries of turmoil and transformation, Spartacus's rebellion remains a beacon. His life inspires poets, revolutionaries, and everyday people alike. In his struggle, they find echoes of their own hopes and battles against oppression. Though Spartacus himself vanished into the shadows of the final battle, his spirit never did. His fight reminds us that the courage to resist can alter the course of history, even if victory remains elusive. As you drift off tonight, consider the journey of this remarkable man, a slave-turned-gladiator, a rebel-turned-leader, a legend whose story invites us all to question the bounds of power and the meaning of freedom. Rest easy knowing that the past holds stories not just of kings and conquerors, but of those who dared to rise, even when the odds were impossible. Now, as the night deepens and the world quiets, may Spartacus's enduring spirit inspire dreams of strength, hope, and the unyielding quest for liberty. Slowly, the fierce battles fade into silence. The fires that once burned bright now dim to embers, their warmth gentle and soothing. The noise of clashing swords and marching armies recedes like a distant storm, leaving only the quiet pulse of life beneath the stars. In this calm, you can feel the weight of history settle softly, carrying with it lessons and legacies. The tale of Spartacus is not just a story of war, but a reminder of resilience and the human spirit's power to endure. Breathe deeply. Let the echoes of courage lull you. As the night enfolds you, carry with you the quiet strength of those who dared to challenge the impossible.